Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Twin bomb explosions hit a market in central Jos. 46 people killed. State emergency agencies put death toll at over 100. Federal government condemns explosions in Jos, calls it evil and unreasonable. Senate joins the House of Representatives in approving 6 months extension to the state of emergency in the northeast. And Thai Prime Minister calls for peace as military imposes martial ban in the country. A quick reminder to you now that all our top stories are on our website channelstv.com and on youtube.com/channelsweb. To get us on the move, visit m.channelstv.com to view us live on your mobile device. You can also download the Channels TV app for Android, iOS and Windows phones from their respective stores. And of course, you can interact with the Channels Eyewitness feature on our Android, iOS and Windows 8 platforms. So if you have pictures or videos to share with us, tap the application on your device, swipe to reveal the Eyewitness menu, and then follow the instructions. The Senate has unanimously approved the extension of the state of emergency in the northeast states of Adamawa, Borno and Yobe for another 6 months. The northern lawmakers, who had last week opposed the extension of emergency rule, made a U-turn today. While supporting the extension of emergency rule in the 3 northern states, the Senate also made some demands on the executive, and they include proper arming of the armed forces deployed to arrest the insurgency and adequate welfare for the troops.
Those in favor of the motion as read out by the leader of the Senate and seconded by the minority leader, say aye. Aye. Again, say nay. The ayes have it.
And this was how the Senate approved the extension of emergency rule in Borno, Yobe and Adamawa states for another 6 months. But not without making some demands from the executive.
That the ministers of defense, police affairs, the service chiefs, the national security advisor, the director general state security services do report to the Senate on a monthly basis progress made in combating the insurgency, on the basis of which this distinguished Senate can take any decision it considers necessary, including but not limited to the revocation of the declaration of a state of emergency. Urge Mr. President to prepare and submit to the National Assembly supplementary budget to meet any established financial requirements needed to combat the insurgency.
This decision to extend emergency rule in the northeast was not easily reached. It took hours of a closed-door meeting between the Senate President and lawmakers, particularly those from the northern states. The Northern Caucus in the Senate last week said its members would vote against the extension of emergency rule in the 3 states because it was not achieving the purpose for which it was declared. But it's obvious that an agreement was reached during the talks.
An agreement was reached that they would consider some conditionalities to attach to the declaration of emergency, and I think that swung the votes in favor of the state of emergency.
Unlike before that we used to pass it blanketly, this time around we pass it with specific that this should be done, that should be done, and one of it is we are going to be monitoring, not only monitoring, we are going to be reviewing the state of emergency on monthly basis, so that if after a month and we feel that the state of emergency is not needed, we will drop it.
Part of those conditions we give out is that the welfare of the officers on the ground should really be taken care of properly.
This is the second time emergency rule has been extended in Borno, Yobe and Adamawa states in about 2 years. After all said and done, would this extension make any difference in the fight against terrorism, and would the presidency give in to the demands of the Senate? Only time will tell. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
Now, the federal government has announced the deployment of more troops to Borno State as part of efforts to rescue the Chibok girls. The move, according to the coordinator of the National Information Crisis Management Center, Mr. Mike Omeri, is aimed at fast-tracking the search and rescue operations. Mr. Omeri, who is also the Director General of the National Orientation Agency, said Allied forces will continue to complement the efforts of the Nigerian military.
This action comes in the wake of the regional alliance to checkmate the activities and the deployment of additional troops to reinforce the ongoing military operations in the northeastern zone. This action comes in the wake of the regional alliance to checkmate the activities of Boko Haram in the region, and also goes to strengthen the President's avowed resolve to rescue the missing girls and his commitment to providing total security for all Nigerians. Meanwhile, the structures for the coordination of the activities of the input of allied countries' forces in the ongoing search and rescue operations have been set up, awaiting takeoff any moment from now.
There are strong indications that the federal government has formally asked the UN Security Council Al-Qaeda Sanctions Committee to blacklist the militant group Boko Haram after the kidnapping of the Chibok girls. UN diplomats say that if there is no objection by the 15-member Council Committee, which operates by consensus, then Boko Haram will be sanctioned on Thursday this week. The document submitted by Nigeria to support its blacklisting request is said to have referenced a bomb attack on the United Nations Nigerian headquarters on August the 26th, 2011 that killed 24 people. It also describes as a campaign of violence against Nigerian schools and students by the group and references other attacks on schools last year. In other stories, the immediate past chairman of the Oyo State chapter of the National Union of Road Transport Workers, Mukaila Lamidi, popularly known as Auxiliary, has been arrested by the police in Lagos for being in possession of arms. The suspect, who is now in the custody of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, Ikeja, claims one of the guns purchased 3 years ago was given to a friend who's still at large.
Abdulaziz Amao, a major cross-border arms dealer arrested in March 2014 by the Special Anti-Robbery Squad Ikeja with 10 AK-47 rifles. Abdulaziz's confession led to the arrest of one of his customers, Mukaila Lamidi, popularly known as Auxiliary. Auxiliary, who is presently an executive member of the National Body of Union of Road Transport Workers, NURTW, in Nigeria, explains how he purchased the arms for self-protection after an attack 3 years ago.
He introduced how to sell guns to me. When I tell him that some hire killer come to my house, kill my first son, and they wound me for leg.
I sold both the AK and this 9mm to him. The AK was 350, and the other this 9mm2 is 350.
One of the arms sold to him have been recovered. We are still tracing the other one. But unfortunately, I think what we have against him here is better probable than lawful possession of firearms. But we've now been told that he has a series of cases of murder in Oyo State. So after we finish, we'll send him back, because I think murder is a more serious crime. So we'll send him there so that he will go and face the law as it is.
These are not real military men, but former man-o'-war members recruited for security guard services in Festac area. The suspects claimed they dumped such duty to disguise as military men to earn a better living.
We arrested some who are local government, who work for armored of local government. Some were arrested and where they are providing security for churches, and some were picked while escorting vehicles illegally. And the most interesting aspect of it all is that none of them has ever served in the military before.
With the conclusion of investigations, these suspects will be charged to court on various counts.
Well, let's take a look at some legal matters now. And the Federal High Court in Abuja has ruled that it lacks jurisdiction to entertain a suit filed by the suspended CBN governor, Mr. Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, challenging his suspension as the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. The presiding judge, Justice Gabriel Kolawole, held in his judgment that the matter is labor and employment related and therefore ordered it to be transferred to the National Industrial Court.
It's judgment day in a suit filed by the suspended governor of the central bank, Mr. Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, to challenge his removal by President Goodluck Jonathan. After reading the judgment for 2.5 hours, Justice Gabriel Kolawole ordered that the lawsuit be transferred to the National Industrial Court on the ground that the court lacks jurisdiction to entertain the suit. The court ruled that Mr. Sanusi is an employee of the federal government and cannot approach the court with a labor dispute. The court held that the jurisdiction of the court is limited to appointments that are clearly tenured and remunerated by the 1999 Constitution as amended. Lawyers to the federal government and the Attorney General of the Federation applauded the verdict of the court.
Just as we stated in our processes, the judge confirmed our position. The law is there. The court has no jurisdiction. The Constitution, via the amendment, has made all issues pertaining to employment and all those stuffs and conferred jurisdiction to the National Industrial Court.
Well, it's a very good judgment. To me, it's an inaugural lecture for us to learn as far as the judiciary is concerned.
Lawyer to the suspended governor, however, insists that the president's exercise of the executive powers provided for in the Constitution was subject to the Act of the National Assembly.
The judgment was a 50-50 one. We didn't lose. All that he said is that he doesn't have the jurisdiction to entertain the matter, and he has transferred it to the court that he feels has the jurisdiction to entertain it. The processes filed and the agitation of the defendant was for a matter to be dismissed. But he said, based on the merit of the case, he doesn't feel it's right for him to dismiss it. And mind you, he has also answered, the first question he answered was whether or not we had a case. He answered that question in the affirmative that the plaintiff has a case. And therefore, on the justice of the case, he doesn't feel it's right for him to dismiss it or even strike it out. And in order to expedite the action, he has transferred it to the National Industrial Court.
Sanusi, who is challenging his suspension, had joined President Goodluck Jonathan, the Attorney General of the Federation, and the Inspector General of Police as defendants.
When the news at 10 returns, CBN Monetary Policy Committee retains benchmark interest rate at 12%. That's on Business News.